Hello and welcome to the LeagueMed 5x5, the show that interviews leaders in medicine, med tech, and healthcare to discuss their careers and ideas through 5 questions in 5 minutes. I'm your host, Rich Purcell, Director of Business Development at LeagueMed. Today, I'm happy to introduce Dr. David Yen, Chairman of otolaryngology at St. Luke's University Health Network. He's also co-founder and president of Specialty Physicians Associates, a group of ear, nose, and throat specialists. Dr. Yen's areas of particular interest and focus include rhinitis and nasal polyposis, head and neck, in-office procedures, and new technologies. To that end, he is the co-founder and chief medical officer of Diagnose Medical, a startup company focused on precision medicine of nasal disorders. Dr. Yen completed medical school and residency at the University of Pennsylvania and remains a clinical associate within the Department of Otolaryngology, Head and Neck Surgery at Penn. He's also clinical associate professor at Temple University School of Medicine and a clinical associate professor at DeSalle University. He's a member of the American Rhinological Society and a fellow of the American College of Surgeons and American Academy of Otolaryngology and Head and Neck Surgery. Welcome, Dr. Yen. So, Dr. Yen, why did you become a doctor and why an ENT?
So, Rich, in my opinion, all healthcare is local and it's pretty personal. And I was lucky enough to be raised by a physician. My mother was an obstetrician gynecologist. So, spending time with her in my childhood, wherever we went, whether it's the grocery store or anywhere else, she would run into patients that would come up and say hello to her. And it was clear the impact that she had on their lives and the fact that they really appreciated her and valued her was really evident. So, that was a powerful thing for me to see growing up, say, hey, who doesn't want to go grow up and do something that they're liked where they're making a difference in people's lives? Secondly, I never thought of healthcare as not involving surgery for one reason or another. Certainly, there's medical specialties that don't, but I always conceived of healthcare involving surgery, and I like to work with my hands as well. Why ENT in particular? Once I got to medical school, once I got exposed to the surgical specialties, I fell in love with ENT for a number of different reasons. One is the variety of disease states or conditions that we get to treat. And two is also the range of patients. So we get men and women, we get young and old, we get the range of things. We get medical management, and we also get surgical management. The surgeries are simple, some of the most common surgeries that are super brief but make an impact, like placing ear tubes, to great big surgeries involving microscopes and fancy technology and robots and so on. So that variety was something that really, really appealed to me.
You formed Specialty Physicians Associates to focus on ENT, and you have a big group that's affiliated with a number of hospitals in your region. What are the benefits and challenges of managing an independent specialty practice within the overall aspects of healthcare in this complex world of healthcare now?
There's definitely benefits, but most certainly challenges as well, Rich, right? So some of the benefits, small is tough nowadays, and I'm not saying necessarily that bigger is better, but to a certain degree, bigger may be necessary in healthcare, and bigger is more stable. And so the evolution at first, I started in practice with one associate, and it didn't take long for me to have more work than I knew what to do with. And in some ways, that's a problem. On the other hand, what's the solution to that? If there's more work, if there's patients that need care, if you can find success with recruitment, then it makes sense. And over the last 24 years, I've been really proud to welcome colleague after colleague back to the community where I grew up, to what amounts now to a group of 20 ENTs and allergists and one pulmonologist. So that's how the growth occurred. It's also interesting too, because ENT is a pretty broad field. There's a lot of subspecialties: pediatrics, head and neck, rhinology, facial plastics, laryngology. There's a number, and others. There's a number of subspecialties. So to be able to deliver the best to the people in the community where I live, deliver the best to the patients that I serve, to bring in associates and colleagues with subspecial expertise, that's how the growth, frankly, continues. Some of the challenges are the obvious ones. More people gets difficult in terms of management, right? In terms of personalities and admin and so on. But again, necessary. Some of the other challenges in healthcare in general are having some degree of scale, being able to contend with the other larger entities in healthcare, be they payers or health systems or otherwise. So there are definitely substantial challenges, although we enjoy working on them and doing our best to focus on delivering great patient care.
Um,
So, you know, frankly, otolaryngology is not the only specialty facing pressures. And there's also opportunity in that regard. So right now there is substantial consolidation within otolaryngology, like we see in other specialties as well, be it ophthalmology or dentistry or dermatology or others. So there is, and I think, as I said earlier, there can be some good things that come from that, from being larger, because infrastructure, right? At what point do you look to build out a team in terms of compliance or in terms of human resources or otherwise? On the other hand, what's the priority? And for me, I'm fine with an evolution organizationally as long as the priority remains superior patient care.
I'd love to hear your perspective about payment models and how that works and is going to work going forward.
Well, I mean, Rich, you bring up some great points, right? So I always say to the learners in healthcare that I work with, there's a so-called disincentive to care. Most would argue it's not a direct correlation, but most would argue if you spend more time with the patient, their odds are higher that the care delivery is better, or the perception of care at least
Yeah.
is better. Yet there's a challenge to doing so because we're reimbursed, we're paid by what we document, not by how much we care. So it's a very, very interesting circumstance or situation, which is, baked in the healthcare system in this country, at least right now. There's other things that you mentioned as well. I like to think of things in common sense terms. Let's say that you went to a restaurant and you said, I'd like to eat, but I don't have any money. That restaurant has the right to say, well, sorry, you have to pay for your meal. We're not going to serve you. It's a little different in healthcare. There's an
Yeah.
obligation to provide care, right? So some of these roles don't necessarily fit in the traditional business model, be it by law or by ethics or doing the right thing. It's very, very challenging. Sure. In my individual journey providing care to patients, I came out, I was in practice for 11 years, and had the opportunity to see things that are perhaps problems looking for better solutions. So after practicing for 10 or 11 years, I started to question, what would be necessary to change or do something differently if it might help provide better care or treat more patients. So that thought process led to a concept of how do I provide care to more than one patient at a time. So based upon that interest, I started to work with a number of medical device companies, getting involved with clinical research, and then giving feedback regarding device design and human factors and so on. And that journey continued to the point where trying to get involved in innovation myself. I went to what amounts to a crash course, if you will. Some friends, some bioengineers that I worked with, a number of different companies said, "Hey, Dave, Stanford has a biodesign program. They have a fellowship that's 1 year. You could go there and do a fellowship on biodesign and innovation." Not something that I could devote the time to given my stage of career and family and so on. But they had a weekend course on innovation in eye, ear, nose, and throat. So I went to that weekend course, and believe it or not, my startup diagnosis arose out of that 4-day course. Right. So that was, again, very much a brief but intense primer on how you might come up with a problem, how you might think about solving that problem, and then the steps to go about to actually do it, right, in terms of stuff in IP and fundraising and building a company and all these steps. So believe it or not, Diagnose arose from that event, which occurred in spring 2019. Component of what Diagnose is up to really, so Diagnose, to summarize, is really looking at, can we, based upon nasal secretions, can we provide objective, actionable information to allow providers and patients to have more effective, more precise, more tailored, more direct care? So LeagueMed to me represents a natural extension. My interest in actually trying to make a difference in the real world with patients. And some of this came to me too from my own challenges with my own startup in terms of how difficult it was to fundraise, right? So to create a platform where you've got a community of physicians, there's other ones out there where we can talk about stuff clinically and so on, but some of this other stuff where it may be it may be more challenging to come up with others to speak to about this. I'm sharing my experience, but there's people doing what I'm doing with more experience than me, and I'd love to learn from them. Where's that platform to do so? So as a concept, a community looking at this was something that I thought made a lot of sense. This has been done in other arenas, looking at synovial fluid in the orthopedic world, having companion diagnostics in the room world to look at response to therapy. Is someone going to respond, and what's the response to therapy? These are things that have already been done in other specialties. What's my ability as an otolaryngologist with a company that's looking at nasal secretions for respiratory disease? What's my ability to talk to a rheumatologist about their experience with these companion diagnostics, or the orthopod, or whatever? So I think there's a lot of room and a lot of upside to cross-fertilization or discussion across the specialties. And that's one of the appealing things about LeagueMed. That's not just a specialty-specific thing. It's a platform for providers, and I sure do hope that opportunity evolves for us to chat together. There's colleagues within ENT that are more academic, and I'll use the word, are smarter than I am, and have been in this space looking at nasal secretions for a diagnosis. But for me as an otolaryngologist, I have a tool called an endoscope. I can go in the nose, I can sample secretions precisely, and because that's in my skill set, that's what I would think would be the best way to sample secretions. The problem is that everybody can't see an otolaryngologist have their nasal secretions sampled, correct? Right? So that's some of the whole process here, saying, say, wait a sec, what would be the patient's perspective? What would be the primary care physician's perspective? What are ways that we can make this more accessible to more people? Because that's very, very necessary from the commercial perspective. Right now, our world is interconnected. That's not going away anytime soon. The circumstances are there with population. You could argue how much does climate change impact this, but to me, it's not a question of whether there's another pandemic. It's just when, frankly. And my biggest concern is, and not just regarding this piece, Rich, with anything, making the same mistake a second time. A failure to learn or an ability to change is how, pick an organization, pick an individual, pick a species, that's what results in obsolescence, right? So I think, I'm not convinced that we've learned as much as we should have from our experience with COVID.
What are the benefits and challenges of maintaining an independent specialty practice?
Yes, so I came back to practice in the Lehigh Valley in 2000. As recently as 2008, it was myself and my senior associate, Dr. Bob Hunsaker. But we were blessed with more work than we knew what to do with, and fortunately had success with recruitment, which allowed us to grow our group to what it is now, 20 physicians in addition to 20 other providers, APPs and audiologists. So that growth has been rewarding to be able to provide care, ENT care to the people in our community, but also bring in people with subspecialty expertise, because ENT is a pretty broad specialty, and it's hard to be an expert at everything. So bringing people with subspecialty expertise, that has been really nice. I think the trends that drive us towards further growth and consolidation are out there. I'm lucky enough to sit on the workforce task force for my specialty. In that last survey that we completed in 2023, just over 50% of ENT physicians remain in private practice, but that's a stark difference than 10 years ago. So like it or not, there's a lot of change and consolidation within the space, and I know otolaryngology is not alone in that regard.
A lot of docs have become entrepreneurs, and you've become an entrepreneur. Tell me about Diagnose.
Yes, so along the way, along this journey, I got started first committing to patient care and clinical care, and what I call trying to help make a difference for one patient at a time. But as years went by, I would see problems or things that could be improved and think, hey, how could I individually help make a difference with that? So that was the next step of my individual evolution, philosophically saying, how do I help more than one patient at a time? And the avenue that I thought I could do that was by getting involved with industry partners, first with clinical research, then subsequently as those relationships grew with feedback and working more closely, more on device side admittedly than pharma side, although nowadays I do work with companies on pharma side as well, getting involved to try to help innovate and try to make a difference. And then the natural step after that was, is there ability for me individually to form my own company to try to address a solution? And so that's the underpinnings, if you will, of how Diagnose came to be as a concept. The formal aspects of Diagnose is a company that I co-founded, that's really focused on providing objective, actionable information from nasal secretions so that patients and physicians can make better care decisions. So that's what Diagnose is focused on. That arose out of a process of first going to a course at Stanford, a weekend course, if you will, on innovation ENT, and I'm quite proud of what we've accomplished after only a weekend course introduction. But it arose out of that subsequently to what it is today. We're on the cusp of first sales in 2025, so that's an exciting time for our startup.
You're an investor in LeagueMed. Tell me about why you invested and what you like about LeagueMed.
I'm so grateful to have an opportunity to be involved with LeadMed as an investor, and then as a physician member of LeadMed. So at multiple levels. For me, when I first heard about LeadMed, I carry perspective from different directions as a practicing physician, certainly as an entrepreneur with my own startup, having going through, it's never done, it seems, going through the fundraising process on an ongoing basis. I know that there's a lot of need. There's a lot of need from other startups and a lot of opportunity in this regard. So when I heard about LeagueMed, it really struck me. It just made a lot of sense to pull together physicians in a community. There's plenty of physician communities where we can talk with each other about clinical care and other things, but not so many communities where we might talk about the business of medicine or the startup environment or entrepreneurship or innovation or any of these things. So that alone as a community made sense to me. From the fundraising perspective, it's not a novel idea, if you will. If you could crowdsource or crowdfund, if you will, if you bring together enough physician members, then that might provide opportunity from the fundraising perspective. But in terms of additional value added, if I was pitching Diagnose per se to a family office or to an angel fund or to a VC, to pitch to an entity like LeagueMed, to have the chance to have feedback from potentially thousands of physicians and colleagues would be remarkably beneficial and useful. So for all these reasons, I thought it was super exciting, and I didn't hesitate, and again, glad to be involved. Another level, physicians nowadays, it's challenging. More of us are employed. More of us have less flexibility and opportunity. Very few of us have opportunity to look at anything that might be considered an alternative investment. So to provide a platform for physicians to use their intellectual capability and perhaps have access to investments otherwise, I thought would be extremely well received by the physician community. So for all these reasons, I'm thrilled to be part of LeagueMed.